And we're recording.
Okay.
We
have the public.
Yes, we have Heather is there, Joe Davidson, Tim from Goodwill, Brian Whitaker's here.
Is Janet here?
Yes, I'm going to bring her over.
Okay. And the mayor. Is the mayor joined us?
He's not in yet.
Okay, well, we're just going to go ahead and get started. I want to say welcome everyone and Happy New Year. I'm Linda Ratchford, Newcastle City Council President. And with me this evening, I have the full council, which is Councilperson Russell Smith, Councilperson Suzanne Souter, Councilperson Michael Platt, Councilperson Valerie Leary. Also have our city administrator and also our city clerk, Brian Whitaker, and our city treasurer, Janet Carlin. In addition, we have our city administrator, Bill Barthel, and Chief of Police, Chief Rick McCabe, our city solicitor, Dan Lasco, and our building official, Jeff Bergmuller. And the host for this evening is Kim Bergmuller, who is our council secretary, and she will be managing the meeting for us. I'm going to make a few changes in the agenda. I'm going to be starting with the agenda item of update on the transportation plan, and we have Heather Donegan of Will Mapco joining us. She is the project lead and working with the city and DelDOT and our consultants, Century Engineering. And also, if you're following along at home and are interested in what she's talking about, you can go to our city website and look at the agenda for this evening and click on a link. And there's a link directly to the Will Mapco site and the first task from the transportation plan. We also have a citizen advisory group working on this project too. So we're real excited to have you here this evening, Heather. And if you would just give everyone an update on what's going on this very important project.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm going to try and share my screen with a very brief PowerPoint. All right, are you guys able to see that?
Yep.
All right, so first I'd like to thank City of Newcastle Council for helping us get this project going. We're working with a team that includes City of Newcastle and DelDOT. And of course, the project is funded with 80% funds from Will Mapco, but the 20% match was provided by City of Newcastle, which is allowing us to move forward with an update of more than a decade old transportation plan that the City of Newcastle has that we worked together with many years ago. So for this plan, we're looking at really comprehensively at transportation in the City of Newcastle. So first, the purpose of the plan is to look at improving the multimodal transportation network to give good connections to communities, trails, enhancing the health and livability of the community, as well as looking into reducing illegal truck traffic and improving safety. So that first draft goal is very broad. We also want to make sure we're looking at flooding and sea level rise impacts on land use and particularly transportation corridors. We hope to further some of the planning the city's already done, looking at the gateways to the community, as well as looking more to further develop some of the analysis that's been done at parking. So we've already worked to put together an existing conditions report, which you can find on the project website. And this reviews existing land use issues, potential future land use, demographics, transportation, and some of the assets and constraints, so that as we move forward with planning, we're basing it on current and future conditions in the community. So where we are now, we're looking at the community visioning phase of the project. So really working very closely with the community and stakeholders to find out what's important to the community and what the issues are on the ground. From there, we'll work to develop some draft recommendations, which we'll assess the feasibility of, and then work with the community to prioritize those to select what should be moving forward. And we think the project will take about a year. I think one thing that's changed since we did our last transportation plan with the City of Newcastle is we've gotten much better at developing recommendations that can be quickly implemented. So one thing we do as part of this report is a PEL study, or Planning and Environmental Linkage Report, and that'll take the top recommendations and actually include what's needed to seamlessly move this plan into the design and engineering phase of the projects. Public involvement is going to be really critical. So we're working with a team, as I mentioned, that includes City of Newcastle, DelDOT, and DART, being assisted by Century Engineering. As Linda mentioned, we have an advisory committee that's very broad representation from the community as well as other state and local organizations. But we'll be having 3 public workshops, and it's really important that we get good participation in those from many throughout the community. So you'll be hearing from me within the next few days to help promote those workshops. And the first one will be coming up in February. And so at that first workshop, we're going to be looking for feedback on some of the major issues that we'll be addressing in the plan, and what the concerns of the community are in terms of what are the important destinations and which ones are maybe disconnected. Looking at walking and biking, traffic and truck issues, traffic calming issues with speeding traffic, where we can improve transit, some signing improvement potential, and parking, and where there are flooding issues. And so that first public workshop will be coming up February 10th. And we envision this being a really interactive meeting, even though we're all going to be separate in our own homes. Doing it virtually, we hope to have breakout rooms where people can really discuss in small groups some of the issues and provide meaningful feedback in the process. And with that, I will take any questions. There's the website to the project, so we'll be keeping that updated throughout the project. And of course, you can always reach out to me with any questions. And
This is Council President Redford. I also want to mention. Also want to mention that there is on the website a link where you can provide comments or questions to Ms. Dunnigan at any time. At this point, I'm going to open it up to council, mayor and council, and then I will open it up to the public if they have any questions on this very important topic. Council members?
This is Councilman Smith. How are you doing, Heather?
Hey, how are you?
One question I think I asked before is down at Hare's Corner, whether that intersection will be included. And I was told, you know, it's outside city boundary. Well, actually, Route 13 goes through the city. Burger King on the other side of the road is in city boundaries. So Route 13 is in the city.
Yes.
So is there any way we can get consideration of the Hare's Corner intersection?
I hope that we can. Of course, we don't have a huge budget, but I think it's such an important intersection in terms of its access to the city. And it's kind of right on the border of the city, as you mentioned. So I certainly imagine that'll be part of what we look at. Some of us also participated in a forum that Bike Delaware held a month, I think it was a month ago or 2 months ago. And that one was one of the intersections that Bike Delaware looked at with some consultants from the Netherlands. And we're very interested in what they've come up with and are looking at ways to further analyze whether those recommendations would actually be doable here locally. Any other feedback or questions?
Actually, this is Council President Redford, and I mentioned that I think they had some great ideas at some intersections.
Yeah, we were very excited about some of the innovative concepts that they came up with. So we're looking hard to try and bring those into the planning process, and even seeing if there's a way we can further consult with the outside experts to get some more of their innovative ideas as we move forward. So stay tuned on that. I don't want to get ahead of myself and promise anything, but I think, locally we're always learning, trying to learn from the best and try and bring new ideas into things. And that's certainly one of the most challenging intersections, not just locally, but I think in the entire state. If we can find a way to make it better for traffic and people walking and biking, that would be amazing.
Yep.
So I would certainly hope we can come up with some improvements for that location.
Those Dutch engineers certainly did have some different ideas that maybe our local folks might not necessarily go right to. So.
Right.
At this point, if there are not any other questions from Mayor and Council, I'm going to open up, see if there's any questions from the public. If you would raise your hand via the Zoom app, or if you would press *9. Okay. Any questions, Kim?
Not seeing any hands raised.
Okay, thank you. At this
There's
point,
well, workshop.
we want to thank you. Yes, yes. You want the workshop. We want everyone to participate, and we'll be sending out more information about that. And that will be a good chance for the residents and businesses to get involved. And
Actually, Council President.
The mayor would like to say something.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. If you could maybe just for a minute, you said there'd be a couple of workshops. So what would the agenda be? Would they be the same for all, or are they going to address different subjects at each workshop?
Different subjects. So I would say the first one, if you want to really actively contribute to the conversation of what's the recommendations are going to be, the first one is probably the most important, because this is where we're really coming up with the vision of the plan and getting a sense what the local priorities are. So the first one will be the one where there's the most opportunity to interact and provide really meaningful feedback. The second workshop, we're going to have some draft recommendations. So it'll be a little bit more presentation. We'll still have discussion, conversation, and look for feedback. But the second one, it'll be more presenting a range of ideas and getting your feedback. What are the most important of those ideas? And then the third workshop will have things prioritized and have what we think is doable in terms of recommendations. And it'll be kind of a draft of what will be going into the plan, getting feedback for that.
Okay, and the second and the third are projected to be approximately held about when, please?
I would say the second one might be late spring and the third one might be in the fall. I will give those as guesses. And I'm hoping at least by the last one, we may all be in person together again. Fingers
Great,
crossed.
thank you. That's great. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much for joining us this evening. We look forward to hearing more.
Super, thank you.
Okay, we are going to return to our agenda with a couple of modifications. We're going to go through the standard agenda through public comments and then a proclamation from the mayor, and then I will prioritize the resolutions we need to pass today for some appointments and then go back to the discussion topics. So at this point, we're going to go to the minutes, and are there any comments from council on the minutes? All right, have a
I
motion.
have one minor, very minor clerical correction. On
Okay.
page 5 of the regular meeting minutes, second paragraph, says May Carranza read the proclamation. I think that should be mayor.
Any other comments?
Thank you, Suzanne.
Okay, if there are no other comments, to have a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion for Leary, second from Ms. Souter. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? All right, the minutes have been approved unanimously. At this point, I'm going to ask our treasurer, Janet Carlin, to come forward and present the treasurer's report.
Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
This is the unaudited treasurer's report as of December 31st, 2020. The total unrestricted funds is $4,384,225.96. Total restricted funds, $2,359,135.75. Total cash in the account, $6,743,361.71.
Any questions from the treasurer or any comments you would have regarding what's happened in the last month?
We are 50% through this particular budgeting period, and we're 6 months, as you probably figured out. The percentage that is reflected on the budget report is higher than it has been in the last few years, and I think that's reflective of the fact that some of our budgeted figures have not been we increased six of the revenues a month or so ago, but the percentage here is kind of high because we have gotten some grand totals in for instance, transfer taxes and so forth. But we are very much on schedule.
Any comments or questions? Do I have a motion to approve the treasurer's report as presented unaudited?
So moved.
Motion for Mr. Smith, second.
Second.
Second for Ms. Souter. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we have approved the treasurer's report unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Carlin.
Thank you very much.
And now I'd like to ask for reports from the city administrator and staff.
You're muted, Bill.
Uh-oh.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. What I was saying was there was some information that went out earlier this afternoon from Kim concerning our selection, or our selection, if you will, of trash cans. I'll ask Kim maybe to put those up on the screen if she would. I've had staff look at a number of different options. George basically came back and we agreed that what we're presenting tonight is the solution we're presenting, and we'll just kind of go with that. The cost on these cans is $851. Kim, can you share that, please, with everyone?
Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now.
Okay, thanks.
And I think it's also important, Mr. Barthel, to share the perspective from the staff in terms of what works and doesn't work.
Right. Okay, absolutely. So what we did was we put these in 3 colors: black, brown, and a green. You can see what they look like. And we did look at going with exclusively recycle bins, like side by side as an option. But in my conversations with both George and with Keith Wilson about that, the thought was, or the concern they had was that in doing something like that, people will take trash and throw them into the recycle bins. And the thought was, okay, let's use these standalones and maybe designate a couple of those as recycle, and work that through the process and just kind of see how that works. Obviously, if they're combining trash and recycle in one bin, you're all aware of the fact that Delaware Solid Waste has said that if you send recycle over and it has a significant amount of trash in it, we are going to be penalized for that. So anyway, the thought that I'm proposing is that we take one or we take a few of these cans, we label them recycle, and use that with the other, 13 or 14 cans that we're buying. And that's kind of where we are with that. Now, I'm going to leave it up to council to make a decision if they want to go black, brown, or green. I mean, I would think if you want to do a couple of recycle cans in this, like these, I would, suggest those are green, and we can, put a sticker on them that designate them as recycle. And then we can go through this, see how this all works out. As I said, the cost of these are $851. We had identified $16,000, which leaves us about $2,300 additional dollars, which, we'll talk about later in your budget, for funds that you can use either to put aside for more garbage cans or other things that council chooses to do with that money.
Oh, can we go back to, can we go back to the brown one? Can I see the colors again? Are we voting on color tonight?
We're certainly commenting color, so I think comments would be appreciated. And also the top of the can, that might be a staff recommendation, whether you want to keep the critters out or not, or the rain out.
That is a staff recommendation for all of the above. And, in terms of, bees and that type of thing, along with critters, like you say, we've had instances before where, you put trash in there, and in the middle of the summer, you have issues with bees and flies and everything else. So that absolutely was a staff recommendation.
Can you, so for recycling purposes, the green cans you were mentioning, we can still get the green with this kind of top on it because you'd have the same
Yes.
issue.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we're thinking that again. We could experiment with it, if you will, get a couple of the greens. If you decide to go with black or the brown, as for the rest of the downtown, and then we can identify those as for recycling.
So
This
Mr.
is,
Smith, go ahead. Go ahead. I was going to ask you which one would go best with our branding, black or brown.
Oh, you're asking me?
I am.
Yeah. I think the least intrusive in this case. I wouldn't go with red or yellow or bright blue. I think a subdued color. I like Bill's idea of the green for recycling, and which I think would probably be most appropriate near a place where like the Battery Park, but I don't think we have any match for the branding program here, but I think a subdued color that would not intrude would be the best. I don't know what color that is. I'm not sure.
That's considered brown.
Is it brown? Looks kind
That's
of
considered brown.
Okay. All right. It's not a matter of the branding system. It's a matter of fitting in with the streetscape.
So Ms. Leary, do you have a thought about the brown versus the black? That's really what we're talking about, is brown versus
Yeah,
black.
we have actually brownish cans out there already. And I would probably go with the brown, but that's a personal.
Well, if I may, Madam President, interject, we could order a couple of the browns and put them out there along with the greens, and we could do that. We could do that incrementally.
Is there any advantage to ordering more than just a few together? In other words, if you order a large number, does the unit price go down, or that doesn't matter?
Okay, these are currently reduced to the $851 price, and I had Diane reach out to her contact at this company, and his response to us, in fact, today was, get me a number, what are we talking about? And then he would kick it up the chain. So he was a little bit evasive, but I would think that if we went and said, look, no matter what, we're gonna commit to 16 cans, we'll see if he'd be willing to give us an additional discount off of that, but that's kind of where it is.
So if we went with 16, would we do like 4 or maybe 6 recycle and 10 trash, or?
No, initially, I don't know that I would go that high on the recycle. I'm thinking a few recycle to
4
see,
maybe?
excuse me. Yeah, we could do 4, certainly. Yeah. And now if you decide on a color, it's a no brainer. We would just order the 16. And like you said, we could do 4 of the recycle and 12 of the other. But if you'd like to actually see a couple samples of them, we can do that too.
Yeah, Councilman Platt here. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Bill. I vote with the brown since all the new signs are brown.
Yeah,
I mean, that seems to be the color scheme that's going right now. I mean, it's a little bit lighter, but I'm just sitting here looking at our packet, and all the signs are brown. All the bike signs are going to be brown. Parking signs are brown.
They're not signs, Mike. This is Russ. Those aren't signs. They're apparently for the pavement, and the branding signs are a dark blue and a dark red. They're not brown.
Right. No, but I mean, even when you look at the bike signs that are on South Street, they're brown.
Yeah, but they're not part of our system. That's what the city put in. There will be a number of signs as we've discussed before, like the ones that we just put in for the new parking area, and they'll be throughout the downtown and further out.
Well, that's brown, isn't it?
What?
The parking area is brown and white.
The signs? No,
Yeah.
they're red. They're red and blue.
Okay, I apologize. My other concern is universally, recycling bins are blue. Universally. I don't care what kind of signs you put on them. I mean, you can paint recycle all you want all over them, but no matter where you go, recycling is blue. I mean, you talk about confusions. That's just my own opinion.
Yeah, good point.
Can we get blue?
I don't believe these come in blue. I think we would actually have to, we'd have to look at another cans that are specifically made as recycle cans.
We can try it. We can put the labels on it. I'm just thinking, you know, when I walk out of Wawa, they've got that 3-bin thing, and the recycling one is blue and the other 2 are silver. It's just something to think. I mean, it's a thought. Put a lot of effort into trash cans. Let's get it over with, is my thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's just get some.
Right.
Yeah, so a point being, the signs are, some of the signs are brownish. Okay, not all, not the branding signs, obviously, but our light poles are black.
Yeah.
I don't want to get down in the weeds on it too much, and maybe it doesn't make a difference because, like we said, the current trash cans, at least the ones on the green, are brownish. I don't know what they're not black, and they're not green, so we'll call them brown.
But one other thing with the black, this is Council President Ratchford, black is easy to match, brown is not. I don't know if you have to touch them up or if they're plastic, or, you know, it might show less if you have to paint them.
Oh, in terms of having black?
Yeah, that's just one thought, or match the light pole, but I would go with whatever everyone else thinks.
Well, that's a good point about having to touch them up here and there, so.
If we match the light poles, is that a good thing? The black, and then see if we can get blue, or maybe even if it's a different brand, the recycle in a blue that's the same style, but a recycled color. How would that be? You've got black and blue. Thoughts?
I would like to try. I know what Mike is saying, that yes, that's most of the recycling is blue, but the green does stand out, and if it's screaming recycle on it, then, you know, if somebody puts their trash in it, then they're just not reading and they don't care. So
why don't we go with what the city administrator said, which is to order a few of them and get them out there and see how we like them. Would that be amenable?
I agree. I think Bill's idea is a good one, and
unless ordering 16 of them is going to save us about $5,000, then otherwise, I don't know what I don't think the discount would be that much at all. Bill?
Well, no, as I'm saying, we would commit to 16. So in other words, and let's just be clear of exactly how many. So if we said we're going to commit to 16, but I'm only going to bring in, three or four of the browns and a couple of the greens at this point, they might say, okay, again, I'd have to talk to them, or have Diane talk to them and say, once we order the 16, we just want to be sure we're getting the colors and what have you we want.
Right.
But,
Okay.
but to your point, I don't know that we're talking about a big significant number anyway at this point.
Do we leave it to the discretion of the city manager? Anybody want to pick a color? So we move on to the next topics.
So moved.
Well, what color, Russ?
Oh, I think brown is the least intrusive. Black is, it stands out. And let Bill, if he wants to get a couple green ones as recycling, let's do it.
Okay.
I'm for brown.
Okay.
Great.
Let's move
The
on.
mayor does have his hand raised.
Pardon?
The mayor does have his hand raised.
Okay, Mayor, would you like to make a comment?
Sure, just real quick. Bill, does the vendor sell touch-up paint that matches the paint? And number two was, I think where you guys were headed makes the most sense. I think I would leave it to the staff to decide the range of trash versus recycling and the locations, because I think they'll have a better idea, especially the public services crew, about where they find the most recycling, where they find the most trash, and what would be the right spot. So I think if you guys give those guys the greatest amount of flexibility in terms of the quantity and the locations, that makes the most sense. Thank you.
Makes sense to me. Let's move forward. Okay, Mr. Rethel, what else do you have to share?
That's all I have, Madam President. I don't know if council has any other questions for me. If not, I'll ask Jeff if he has anything he needs to or wants to add at this point.
Not much to add. We made a good account of ourselves this month, and I think we're in good shape for the winter.
You did what this month? I'm sorry.
We made a good account of ourselves for as a public service project with some paving touch up and a bunch of loose ends tied up for the end of the year. So it was a decent month.
I drove out to Davidsonville today to look at what was fixed, and it's like I almost couldn't tell what was fixed because of the way they did it. I guess what did you call that? A lift and what?
It's a deep lift. We paved about between 2,700 and 3,000 square feet of potholes. It was.
I mean, they look good. So.
Well, it came out pretty well. So.
Yeah.
That's one thing.
Okay. Anything else for Jeff? If not, then Chief.
Thank you. I should be brief. First, I want to let council know that in the end of December, the Delaware Police Accreditation Commission certified our use of force policy. You may be aware that in June of 2020, the president signed an executive order on safe policing for safe communities, where 14 elements of our policy needed to be met. There were standards set that if an agency didn't meet these standards, they would not be eligible for federal grants. 2 were mandatory, 12 were optional. We met all 14. We submitted our paperwork beginning of December, and we were certified the end of December. So we're eligible for all the federal grants, and that's certification lasts 3 years. And the only other thing I want to add is that I've been talking about this annual report. I kind of predicted it would not be ready till February. I was hoping to have it ready by today, but it is rather extensive. So it will definitely be ready for February's meeting, and I hope to get it to Mayor and Council well in advance so that you have an opportunity to review it in case you have any questions. And that's all I have. There's no questions.
Questions for the chief? Okay, thank you very much, Chief, for everything you do and for all the rest the employees. This point, if you don't have anything else, Mr. Barthel, we'll go to council communications.
I don't. Thank you, Madam President.
Okay, council communications. Anyone from council want to share something?
Madam President, may I just have a minute?
All right, go ahead, Mr. Platt.
I guess the 15th of last month, I met with some residents out in Shawtown. And I think this should probably be included in the traffic studies that are going to be done for the new railroad crossing and the traffic light that's going to be put on 8th Street. One resident of Clayton Street wants, I think I have it right, would be the northeast side of the street diagonal parking, the other side of the street parking parallel with Clayton Street going one way out of town, Tremont Street coming one way into town. Kind of surprised because we parked our vehicles, you know, in that direction just to see what happens. And there's quite a lot of interest on that block once they saw the cars there. So I just want to throw that out there to everyone, people think about it. And I think that should definitely be included within the study of the new railroad crossing, because once they put that light in and shut down 8th Street, it's going to change the entire flow of traffic in Shawtown.
Certainly, I think we need, we need to look if there, changes may be needed. Anyone else from council want to share
That's just-
something? Okay, business from the mayor.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome
evening.
to, welcome. Hello, Janet. Welcome to 2021. We've got plenty of work to do, and I wish you all the very best. We are probably going to start the next several months in a way that looks not too terribly different than the previous 9. So I asked that everybody just be a good steward as we've been, and that provide good leadership for the public, even though these meetings we can't yet be gathering in person, but we look forward to that day. I also, and I shared this with all of you in writing, our senior residents and essential employees should be in line for COVID vaccinations, and anything we can do to share with neighbors and residents that is being rolled out now, I think will be helpful to everybody. The state is looking for volunteers who have experience in delivering shots. You don't have to be a full-on phlebotomist, but if you've got that skill set, they are looking for people to assist with the rollout of the vaccines. They will be, according to conversations with the governor and his team and the department or the public health leader, Dr. Rattay, they're going to be also at some point in 60 different Walgreens stores around the state, 9 Rite Aids. They've got a plan for the next several weeks to roll out at Del Dot locations, where they're going to be using the inspection areas so that cars can drive in. The volunteers who are administering the shots can be out of the elements, and they'll take a car in. You'll get your, you'll be certified, you get your shot administered, and you'll be on your way to drive out almost. So they'll be using the inspection locations at Del Dot for several weeks as well. I know other states, I was on a call with other state chamber leaders, are using stadiums and places like that because they have large parking lots for which they can kind of snake people around and move people in and out. But all that's going to be happening. The state's got 59,000 doses of vaccine. 27,000 have already been administered as of today. And the vaccines, of course, are safe and not fully effective until the second dose is administered. People have asked about severe allergic reactions, and those are quite rare. So far worldwide, there have been between December 14th and 23rd, there were 1.8 million vaccines that were administered, the Pfizer vaccine, and there were only 21 severe reactions with 4 people needing hospitalization. So people should not forego testing. They should know that our healthcare and critical infrastructure and first responder community is being vaccinated, as are our senior citizens, and they should be confident knowing that the vaccine is safe, and we all hope it will prove to be very effective. I'm also going to share information. I sent this to you via email, and I would encourage people again, as just part of our duty to help folks. There's a program that the business community and the governor's staff and the Department of Labor worked on very hard throughout last year, called Forward Delaware, and it's there are an opportunity now with many people unemployed or underemployed who are seeking new opportunities. There are several different job verticals that are full-on careers in healthcare, technology. Look at how we're hosting this meeting tonight. Schools are virtual. Technology is on the manufacturing floor as much as it is in our banks and our financial sector as it is at the hospitals. In fact, I saw an interesting video of shots being administered and critical surgeries being delivered via robotics. So technology is everywhere, and we need a lot of people with that kind of capability. Similarly, we have people that are needed in, I mentioned the health and the technology sector, but also the building trades. Interestingly, for the building trades program that Forward Delaware is promoting, and there is tuition assistance and stipend assistance for living assistance to get people into full-on training. The building trades programs are being hosted right here in Newcastle over at the Newcastle Adult Vocational Skills Center, which is in the Twin Spans Industrial Park. And if you've not taken a tour, I would encourage you to reach out to them, and at the appropriate time when it's safe, walk through and see what they've got. It's a pretty impressive site, and it's right in our city limits. And we do have residents that could probably benefit from the monies that are set aside. The governor set aside $15 million of CARES Act money for these purposes. So I would encourage you to share that with neighbors and residents. And that's called Forward Delaware. That's the website. And I did provide some of that background materials in the email that I shared with all of you before the meeting tonight. I think it was mentioned earlier that many of the potholes and trouble spots were addressed on some of the residential streets in Dobbinsville, and there is clearly, more to do, but this is good progress. And as we continue to make progress with other priorities, I'm sure that those other spots will go on the list that Mr. Bergstrom maintains, and they will be taken on in due course when all the other priorities around the city are similarly discussed and prioritized. But I want to thank, I think it's also important to note that as of Monday of this week, the plants that make asphalt have shut down now for the coldest time. So we were fortunate to get that project completed late last week because a lot of the projects are now going to be suspended because of the weather, and the asphalt plants will be shutting down for a bit. With colder weather, speaking of that, we are kind of in the middle of winter. Even though it's been a little bit mild, I think it's important that we remind everybody, with more snow and ice likely, it's really important for people to take good care of their sidewalks. We don't want people walking out on the streets, as people are prone to do in our city, in every neighborhood, but really use the sidewalks. But it's really a shared responsibility in the commercial sector and also residents to take care of those sidewalks. So let's please remind everybody that it's their duty, when we do get some weather, to take good care of their sidewalks. And no, Mr. Lasco, for liability reasons, did not put me up to saying that. I just offered that on my own. Also tonight, you've got a nomination from me for George Falcos for the Planning Commission. I've known George for several years, his family for the same amount of time. I think he's a really solid contributor. He's shown a lot of interest in buying properties, managing properties, rehabilitating properties. And I think that that's a skill set that would add nicely to the balance of people that we have on the Planning Commission. And so I would encourage you to look favorably upon his nomination. Bells at Christmastide was a big success, and thanks to everyone that participated. There were other communities around the state that did. I got a very nice response on my email, or on my social media post from Janice Nevin, who's the CEO of Christiana Care. They had several people that were on duty Christmas Eve who were not with their families but were on duty at work. Ms. Leary may have been one of those people. I don't know. Not Christiana, of course.
I was ringing the bells.
Yeah, there you go. All right, but but they were all grateful for the gesture that all of us made, and we also got a little earned media out of that. I think it was one of the Philadelphia TV stations covered the event, and so we got a little bit of notoriety for that as well too. And then finally, I note that January 18th is Martin Luther King Day observance, and the city offices will be closed. So I think it's important that we remind the community of that and reflect upon Dr. King's contributions to our society. With that, Madam President, I have nothing else.
Would you like to go ahead and do your proclamation?
I can do that. I can
Okay.
do that. So this is an Arbor Day proclamation proclaiming April 30th as Arbor Day in the city of Newcastle. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas this holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. And whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. And whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperatures, clean the air, produce life-giving oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of businesses in business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now, therefore, I, Michael J. Quaranta, Mayor of the City of Newcastle, Delaware, do hereby proclaim April 30th, 2021 as Arbor Day in the City of Newcastle, Delaware, and I urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. And further, I urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations. That's the proclamation. I would also encourage folks that if they are going to do that, that they reach out to the tree commission and talk to people so we get the right species.
Mhm.
It's posted on our website.
You're here.
Yeah. So thank you, Mayor. I had a couple of things. First, I wanted to thank Marianne Cavan. She has in the last couple of days resigned from the Board of Elections. She has served us for 15 years and has been chair since 2009. And she's really done a lot to make sure that our elections are fair and equal to everyone, and to have our residents be confident in the elections that we have in the city, which is so important. And so just want to thank her for those years of service, and I will be making a nomination as a replacement for the board. The board itself elects their own chair or co-chairs, but I will be making a placement for the member at a future meeting. At this point, I also want to thank the trust for the parking lot. I think it will be a big help to residents and to businesses and visitors. And it will be attached to the trail, which the city submitted a grant for, and the trust will be matching for the design and construction of a trail, which will link the parking lot to the restrooms and to the playgrounds and to the wharf. And this is pretty much a kind of spine of the park, and that'll provide many other benefits. So I do want to thank the trust for that. At this point, I'd like to open it up for public comments. Ms. Bergman, did we have any email comments before 5 this afternoon?
No, we did not.
Then are there anyone, if you would like to comment on any topic, anything on the agenda or some other topic that you'd like to share a comment on, please raise your hand via the Zoom app or *9 if you're on the telephone.
I do not see any hands raised at this point.
Okay, I do not either. So we will continue with the rest of our agenda. And of course, anyone is welcome to call any of us at any time. So let's move on. I'd like to go through and do the resolutions appointments, to do those first and then come back to the other topics. So I will do that in order. There'll be an appointment for George Veliskakis to planning, appointment of absentee ballot clerk, and then also a resolution making a council appointment for the Board of Elections for Joe Davidson, which is that's made by Councilperson Souter. So at this point, I want to know if I have a motion to consider a resolution approving the mayor's appointments to Planning Commission of George Veliskakis.
So moved.
Second.
A second, Ms. Leary and then Mr. Smith. I'm going to read the resolution. It's Resolution 2021-01. It's a resolution approving mayor's appointment to the Planning Commission of George Veliskakis to fulfill the unexpired term of Brenda Antonio. Whereas the Newcastle City Code provides that the mayor of the city of Newcastle appoint 9 members to the Planning Commission subject to confirmation by City Council, each for a 3-year term. And whereas there is currently 1 vacated position on the Planning Commission, and whereas the City Council proposes to confirm the appointment of George Veliskakis to fulfill the unexpired term of Brenda Antonio, with that term ending on November 9, 2022. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council hereby appoints the following person to the Planning Commission: George Veliskakis, Planning Commission, term ending November 9, 2022. Is Mr. Veliskakis here? I don't believe him. We certainly appreciate.
Yes, I am.
Oh, there you are. Great. Okay.
Hello, everyone.
Just wanted to
Hey,
give you an
George speaking.
opportunity if you would like to say anything.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody there for considering me to fill this spot. I look forward to serving and helping out the city in any way that I can. I just want to say thank you again.
And we thank you for your efforts in the city. Any questions for Mr. Veliskakis? Okay. I think we're ready to vote then. At this point, all those in favor of Resolution 2021 appointing Mr. Veliskakis to Planning Commission indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, well, Mr. Veliskakis, you've just been unanimously appointed to Planning.
Great, I appreciate it. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, George.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go to the next resolution. This is a resolution appointing an absentee ballot clerk, which would be Diane Delgado, who has done this before, to perform duties related to the 2021 city election. Do I have a motion to consider?
So moved.
So-
Suzanne
Second.
Bellin.
Okay, Suzanne, did you make the motion? And
Yes.
Mr. Smith made the second. Okay, I'll read that. So resolution appointing an absentee ballot clerk to perform duties related to the 2021 city election. Whereas the Newcastle City Code provides that absentee voting is permitted for the Newcastle city election. And whereas the code further provides that the City Council shall appoint an absentee ballot clerk to manage all matters relative to absentee voting. Now, therefore, it is hereby resolved that Diane Delgado is hereby appointed as the absentee ballot clerk for the 2021 Newcastle city election. And be it further resolved that this resolution shall take effect immediately. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the resolution has passed unanimously. We'll go to the next resolution, which is Resolution 2021-03. And this is a resolution approving the appointment of Joseph Davidson to the Board of Elections. To have a motion to consider.
So moved.
Second.
The second from Ms. Souter. I'm going to read the resolution. And Mr. Davidson is here. We'll ask him to speak. This is a resolution approving the appointment of Joseph Davidson to the Board of Elections. Whereas the Newcastle City Charter details that the responsibility for conducting all municipal elections in the city of Newcastle shall be vested with the Board of Elections. And whereas this charter further provides that each member of City Council shall appoint 1 qualified elector, who is also a resident of the city, to serve as a member of said board. And whereas there is currently 1 vacated position on the Board of Elections, and whereas the City Council proposes to confirm the appointment of Joseph Davidson to complete the unfulfilled term of John Lloyd, with that term ending on January 8th, 2023. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council hereby confirms the appointment of the following persons to the Board of Elections. Joseph Davidson, appointed by Councilperson Souter, term ending January 8th, 2023. Mr. Davidson, would you like to speak?
Well, I would just like to say that I want to thank Councilperson Souter and the City of Newcastle for this opportunity to serve, which I will do to the best of my ability.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate your willingness. Any questions for Mr. Davidson? Or any comments you want to make, Ms. Souter?
Just that I know that Mr. Davidson is an honest and thorough person who I think will do a very good job of this task.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from council? Okay, at this point, I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor of Resolution 2021 appointing Mr. Davidson to the Board of Elections indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, well, congratulations, Mr. Davidson. You've just been appointed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go back to our regular agenda. And that would be a council discussion and possible action on city operations budget or recovery due to COVID. Is there any topic we need to cover under that? Mr. Barthel?
Well, Madam President, just to give you an update on where we are in terms of what we spent up to the December deadline. We spent $90,000 through the CARES through the county, 107,358 total. If I add into that the 90,000 what the police had submitted in their own grants that they had received, and MSC had a reimbursement of $17,948. Now that leaves us $80,037 from that first phase of funding. We received notice today that the county through the CARES Act through the county just offered us another $188,000 for CARES spending to be completed by March 31st. Obviously, we didn't go through the first 188, but certainly we're grateful that should we need it, it will allow us to do some additional planning for masks and gloves and hand sanitizer and those types of things, and anything else that we feel that we might need for the office. Though, as I think I mentioned at the last council meeting, we've already ordered that. We expect 220 to be retrofitted in the next week, and the police should be done by early February. But anyway, it's still nice to know that the county has afforded us additional funding if we need it.
This is Council President Redford. Can any of these monies be redistributed to others? Could we distribute it locally?
To other,
like businesses within our city limits?
the answer to that is I don't believe it. It's exclusively for the municipality. It's for the municipality. There are other funding sources for other things that I'm aware of. In fact, the mayor's raising his hand that I believe are available through the county, but we do not have the ability to offer those to other folks.
Okay. Mayor, you had a comment?
I did, Bill, so because people have been at home, and we could probably make a reasonable case for this, that there would be a lot of people have been either unemployed or working from home. Not everybody has that ability, but many people do. That would result in more trash and recycling. So can some of the tipping fees and some of the other kinds of expenses that we've incurred relative to that be refunded via these monies?
Well, okay. Anything that we did, the COVID money was for anything that we did not have a line item for to begin with in the budget. Now, we had a line item for our solicitor, obviously, but not included in that line item were additional expenses that we incurred explicitly for COVID. So I would answer that question, probably not. I don't know how I would quantify that that we would be actually able to say that as a result of that, these additional costs. And quite frankly, I don't know that. I'd have to go back and look at the numbers. I think the last time I did, they weren't that much more significant than, say, over, a period of time than they were maybe a year ago. I'd have to look at it. But, maybe Dan, you can comment on that maybe, but my initial thought on that is that no, it would be really hard for me to quantify it and for them to accept that.
This is the solicitor. I guess if you could do a comparative study and you show a dramatic increase, one could argue that the increased cost is related to more folks at home, more people throwing trash and recycling out. But you're going to have to make a case, I think, that it's subject, that the reason for that was COVID related. And if it isn't,
Right.
yeah, you're out of luck.
I mean, we certainly can look at the numbers, but like I said, I think the last time I looked at them, initially they were higher and then I think they leveled out. I have not looked at them in a while, so I certainly could go back and look.
None of that was treated as medical waste, was it?
No, we don't take medical waste. Not intentionally, let me put it that way.
I didn't know if the fire department was separating it or whatever. So.
Well, then that would be, and they are, the fire departments have their own COVID funding, right? That's all I have in that regard,
Okay.
Madam President.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. Next, we're going to go to the budget review. We wanted to cover some things that we had not covered that we kind of put on hold. Specifically, there were several topics that we wanted to look at. One would be nonprofits, municipal campus study, which was $15,000. I put on the agenda additional funds for the tree commission, but they have almost $3,000 left in this year's budget. And their interest is in requesting funding for next fiscal year. So that doesn't need to be on the list. And then the other question came up in terms of the floating dock, and maybe Mr. Berthel can give us an update on where that is with the state.
Okay, thanks, Madam President, again. After the last council meeting, Mr. Lasko and I approached the state. If you recall, I think one of the questions was, okay, if we have $520,000 and we need to do some additional engineering, which we will if we're going to be putting out a bid, would we be allowed to use that or a portion of that $520,000 for that engineering if we don't proceed and finish the project? So we did have a conversation with some folks at the state level. We put together an MOU. Mr. Lasko put together an MOU that we sent to them that included verbiage that basically included the fact that just that if we go to the next phase and we do the engineering, we will be allowed to access some of that $520,000. We have not heard back from the state. As I said, we had a conversation with them. I think it was just a few days, if not, it was less than a week, I think, after the last council meeting, and submitted it to them and have not heard back from them. But just to remind council, the last bid or the last quote that we got on that particular on the project was $570,000. The state has $520,000. So at the very least, if we were to go on that without putting it out to bid, which we will do, we'll put it out to bid, you'd be looking at a difference of $50,000 and then whatever it would cost to do the engineering. So I don't think at this point in time, council can really make a decision on that because I don't have a firm answer yet on what they'll pay for from an engineering perspective.
Okay. And then in terms of the nonprofits, we have, I guess there are several requests that we have. One, we did not mention beautification, which typically we allocate $1,000, but we have not allocated $1,000 this year. So that's something I think we would all like flowers this spring. That would be one small thing to have joy in our lives. So that's something. The others, we have the senior center and then also the library, which I know Ms. Souter has reached out to, and maybe she could give us an update on those.
Sure. I'll start with the senior center. They originally requested $5,000 for their health and wellness programs. And as of December 14th, they had spent nearly $4,500 on that type of programming, which is roughly halfway through their fiscal year. I got this information from Natalie Kaplan, the director. The senior center was open from August 10th through December 14th, when the COVID case increased and they had to shut down again. They're awaiting a state decision on when they can reopen, possibly February 1st. When they were open, they offered fitness classes 5 days a week. Their average attendance was 8 to 10 people per class. The total cost of their fitness classes for a full year is $16,000. So they're asking for less than a third of this from council. I also heard from the board of directors president, Kim Whiff, about the senior center money from the CARES Act. It was designated specifically for salaries and costs related to their being closed due to the pandemic. They cannot use the CARES Act funding towards their fitness classes. Ms. Whiff also said that they've seen a decrease in their contributions from their annual appeal. Both Ms. Whiff and Ms. Kaplan said that the fitness classes provide important physical and mental health for seniors who participate. Ms. Kaplan noted that many of the people who attend the classes call them a lifeline because they not only provide improved physical fitness, but they also provide some socialization and enables them to remain connected to their community. So I would recommend that we grant them the full $5,000 that they requested. Do you want to take these up one at a time, or should I go on and talk about the library?
This is Council President. I think it'd be good to go ahead and talk about the library. We talk about all of them first, then come back.
Okay. The library originally requested $7,000 for computer supplies and programming. At the last time we discussed this, the mayor asked us to find out what they had received from the CARES Act, and also if they had requested funding from the Delaware Alliance for Nonprofit Advancement. They did receive CARES Act funding but it's designated specifically for PPE and salaries. It cannot be spent on routine expenses such as computer supplies or programming. And in terms of DANA, the Delaware Alliance for Nonprofit, the Division of Libraries joined DANA on behalf of all the public libraries, but from what Ms. Clerk, the director of our library, knows, the library does not qualify for any of their grants at this point. Most of the grants do not cover general operating expenses like supplies or programs. Their programming costs are down because obviously since they've been closed, they can't have any in-person programs, and the programming costs are to pay the people who provide the programs. They do not yet know when they'll be reopening. That's up to the county. The staff has been doing some Zoom programs such as a pajama story hour for children, but they have not had any paid performers since they were closed in March. They hope that, if they reopen this sometime in the spring, then they may have some performers. And I'll just add as an aside, most of their program performers are hired through the Delaware Humanities Forum. They provide various educational programming for both adults and children. They are providing curbside pickup of print jobs as a service to those residents who do not have a printer at home. And they will offer up to 10 pages printed at no charge to the patron. This has been a very popular service, and they've been averaging about 30 patrons using it per month. Given that their expenses are down in some of these areas because they haven't had the paid programming, I'm not recommending that we grant their full request, but I am recommending $5,000 for printing costs, and hopefully they will have some in-person programming before the end of the fiscal year if they're able to reopen.
You're recommending 5,000?
Right, for each.
Just for printing costs?
Well, no, in the hopes that they will be able to have some program performers as well before the end of their fiscal year on June 30th. If they can reopen, say in March or April, then they'll probably resume having some programs where they have to pay the people who provide the programming.
What if they don't reopen?
Well, then they might not spend the money. I don't know. We could write that into the grant, I suppose.
Why don't we give them 2,500 for printing costs and make the decision down the road?
Okay, I was under the impression we were going to make the final decision for the rest of the fiscal year tonight, but that's a possibility.
Yeah,
I'm going to be very honest. You know, we don't know what's going into this. Cases are going up. Yes, the vaccine's coming out. I still think as a city, I know myself, I'm playing it very conservatively. And I think as a city, I think we should do the same thing. I mean, sooner or later, the state money's going to run out and the Fed's money's going to run out. And I just think we should be prepared for next year if we don't get transfer taxes or we don't have things going. You know, right now, things are going pretty well in the city, and I think we should let the status quo go and bank some money for the future.
I think investing in our nonprofits is investing in our future, and it's investing in the future for our residents and such. I think that the amount of monies we're looking to give to the nonprofits is really small in consideration of the increase in property tax transfers and such. I was just looking at all of this in here, and I think we're really ahead of the game, and we can still bank money for the future.
But once again, I like the numbers. They curbside pickup, they're averaging 30 a month. That's $5,000 worth of it. Printing 10 pages, that's 300 pages. That's not a $5,000 donation.
Mr. Platt, are you recommending that would be like 2,500?
That would be my advice today. That's what I said. I said cut it in half. They need more down the road. I don't see a problem with it.
Well, as I said, I think that they hope to be able to resume some in-person programming. I mean, even if they can't do it indoors, as the weather warms up, they may be able to do some outdoor programming. And so some of the money would go to pay those program providers. And frequently, like for some of the children's programming, they provide pizza for the kids if they come to the movie night or whatever. So to try to encourage people to bring their children and introduce them to the library. So, you know, I think there is a reasonable chance that they will have some programming before the end of their fiscal year in June, at the end of June. Their fiscal year is the same as ours.
Put the 2,500 in reserve funds, because if we give it to them, we're not getting it back. If we give them 2,500, if we give them 5,000, they use 2,500, we're not getting it back.
Why don't we move on to the Historical Society? Mr. Smith had talked to them.
Yes, they have had a bad year like everybody else. They are $75,000 short on revenue, and they have reached out for grants. The total care grants were 36,800, but then they have a total of CARES Act loans of $78,645. And you know that they asked for $10,000. And they when they are open, and they have been on weekends, and they were throughout the last year, except when they had to shut down with COVID, they have already, performed a service for the city. They work on a calendar year basis rather than our fiscal year. So this is for the entire year. They are $75,243 down. And I expect they will be open. The visitor center anyway. I don't know whether they'll be, when or if they'll be opening the houses. I think right now, whether they're open the visitor center just depends on visitation, like it does every year. The seasonal opening that they have. So I would support the $10,000 for the Newcastle Historical Society.
Okay. Any discussion on that? And we'll move to Goodwill Fire Company. Okay, then also Mr. Platt and I had a meeting with the chief and Tim Moore of Goodwill Fire Company. Which, Mr. Platt, you want to summarize that?
Yeah, it was a good meeting. They're looking at putting a new boat ramp in. They're looking for help from the city. They're willing to put some money up for it. Tim did come back with the numbers on the rescues or whatnot. I don't know if everybody else has those. They were also saying that their fundraising were up this year, which was a big surprise in my mind. Well, obviously people are seeing the value in them at home. So that's my summary of that. I didn't take note of that, President. I was driving at the time. So
Well, that's good. Their request was for $15,000.
Right.
Mr. Barthel was on the same meeting.
And if I may say so, just to pop back into my head, they're looking for a line item in our budget. And so that way we're not guessing on how much they get or what they don't get. One thing that Mr. Moore, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, and I hope he jumps in on this conversation, is some of it was going to be used for personnel. I think in any of these funds that the city gives to these organizations should never be used for personnel, because once personnel is cut, then it's going to be blamed on the city. It's going to be blamed on city council. So if there's a year where we can't make it, all of a sudden city council can't do it, or if the money's mismanaged, nobody audits these. Give the money, nobody audits them, so we don't know truly where the money goes. The other thing that was brought up with Captain Moore is having a seat on their board, and he said that the meetings are open to the public. But I think if we do make them a line item vita or a line item on our budget, and we're going to guarantee them a certain amount every year, I think we should. I think a council person should have a seat on the board.
This is President. I don't know how that we can guarantee an amount every year. I totally support a line item to, pull out their importance and focus on it, and the fact that they provide many services directly to the city, and so do the other nonprofits, but I don't mind putting them in as a line item. But if we had a disastrous year and we couldn't buy a truck, I'd hate to think that we were buying them a truck but couldn't buy ourselves a truck, and the citizens would ask us that question. So Mayor, you had a comment?
Yeah, I think I think this is a very good discussion, and I think, yes, the nonprofits do mean a lot to our community. It's part of the fabric of the community. They do want to plan. I'm sympathetic to their plight. I manage on a full-time basis a nonprofit, and I would say this, and I would ask that you might consult with the city treasurer for her point of view on this, because I think you might, and I think this was suggested either by Mr. Platt or by Ms. Leary or Ms. Souter. I'm sorry, I can't remember. I was listening, but I couldn't follow who was saying what. But I think it might be prudent to say, look, I mean, yes, for planning purposes, they are in need. They could use the resources, but in order for prudent financial practices, and I'm not going to put words in the city treasurer's mouth. She can agree or disagree with this. But it might be prudent to kind of, disperse it at the end of each quarter in tranches. One, it gives them the ability to plan that, if things stay the same and the city's not finding itself, and all of a sudden the numbers completely spike and the vaccine doesn't work, and we end up in a worse position than we already are. I think we have to do that with some kind of thought in mind. We're not out of the woods yet. We're going to be in this situation for a good 6 months, but in order to help these folks out, it might be good to disperse in kind of tranches. That would be something that I would be interested in Ms. Carlin's point of view. If the council president would indulge me.
Yeah, well, yeah. Ms. Carlin?
I don't think that they should have a line item in our budget. I truly don't. I think they are able to get a lot of grants on their own, and not that we haven't supported them in facilitating that, in getting those grants. But as far as a line item in the budget, I don't agree with that.
Yeah, I respect that. My next question would be, would you agree with the mayor is doing it with everybody quarterly? And, you know, it's just not with COVID, it's with anything. The economy could crash. We could have a booming economy over the last 4 years, which, you know, the unemployment was at 3%. 2 years from now, it could be at 14%. I mean, maybe that's something, instead of saying on January 1st, we're going to dole out all, or not January, June 1st, we're going to dole out all this money. Why don't we break it down into quarters?
Well, this is Councilman Smith. It's really not all that money, and all these groups provide services to the city, especially the fire company. And the way we argue about this bit of money at the end of the fiscal year, I don't think I could deal with doing it every quarter. I don't think so.
And I guess just to summarize, I mean, we do have at this, after our last budget meeting, which we spent a lot of time on budget, which is a good thing because we care about every penny, and you know, they're hard-earned dollars from the public. We put in 45,624, which is mayor and council contingency money, which we were going to then allocate, and that included the topics that we're talking about. And we have seen, fortunately, some improvement in many categories, such as transfer tax. We had a huge improvement there, and that was from the sale of a couple of big buildings, and I don't think we should count on that. That's the kind of thing I think we should put in as a capital reserve for some future project or projects. And we are going to get more than we thought on some business licenses, although they're not officially due to February 1, and rental license, we have a little bit more. So there are a few dollars, but I do think that we should be conservative. Also, one thing with Goodwill is I don't know whether or not, I mean, if we need to make a modification to the floating dock for their boat, whether that's going to be an incremental amount of money, and would that be part of our contribution to Goodwill, and that we won't know for a while. So the other option, that the other indication, I think that we need to look at is the municipal campus at 15. So the mayor, you had a question?
Yeah, I thank you. I just wanted to reply. I wasn't suggesting that that in perpetuity that, you know, there be a disbursement on a limited basis, but I don't think there should be a debate. And I appreciate Mr. Smith's comments, but my suggestion wasn't that there should be a debate about whether to disperse, and I don't think anybody's suggesting that. The question is, you know, if the fiscal conditions remain about the same, then you just go ahead and just release the money. But that way you protect the city's interest in the time being while we're in the pandemic. You know, you release part because, you know, the organizations can use the money. They certainly can use the money, certainly could use the shot in the arm. But on the other hand, you're kind of protecting yourself by not releasing all of it at one time. Don't want to get into this kind of exercise of every quarter or every half year or whatever about the worthiness, but simply just hold part of it back until, you know, some period of time. And then, you know, all things being equal, if the fiscal conditions are the same, then just go ahead and release the other part, knowing what the total would be over the fiscal year. That was my suggestion. Thank you.
Councilperson Leary here. This is January, and we redo this again starting in May. So we're looking at 6 months. And, you know, we've held back these funds for 6 months already. You know, so I don't want to give out some now and some 3 months later. And then like I said, we've held it back because we are being protective, which is the right thing to do. But the needs are still there. And we set aside the funds to do it, the discretionary funds. And if we give the funds out as proposed, then we're looking at 32.5. and we still have discretionary funds left over. So I just don't see the point in withholding funds anymore. These folks have waited patiently, kindly for us to make a decision. And we have been lucky to get additional funds in through transfer taxes and the such. And yes, we should set some of that aside, but we do have the funds to help these folks out. And I think we should just go ahead and do it. If doing it on a quarterly basis, you want to do it going forward, maybe, but I have to agree with Russ Smith. I don't want to be having these discussions every quarter. It's just drags out our whole financial discussions.
I agree with that. I agree with you, Valerie.
I totally agree with you, and the mayor solved that problem. We've been talking about trash cans for 4 years now.
I don't think it's been that long, but I would.
Since I've been on council.
Three.
I think the mayor hit the nail on the head. I really do. I think the mayor, like I said, when we put our budget together, it doesn't have to be these discussions. It's Ms. Carlin says these funds are going to be dispersed, and they're dispersed at that point. Not that you have to have a discussion every 3 months or every 4 months.
And I think this year is a different year. I mean, I know normally we don't give the nonprofits the full amount they request. And well, for the library, I'm not recommending that we give them the full amount they request because circumstances have changed since they made that request. But I think, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought here. Oh, we have the money to do it. They've all had really tough years. This year is different than normal years. And so that for that reason, I think we should, and we were able to be a little more generous because we've had this windfall from the large property transfers and still save most of that money in reserve for capital projects and help our nonprofits get through a tough time. It doesn't mean that we're going to always give them the full amount they ask for in the future, but I think if we're able to do it this year, we should to keep them afloat, basically, and fully functioning to support the community in this difficult situation.
So Ms. Souter, I mean, we do at this point, we had put us on specifically 45,000 and 624. There may be a little left over in the garbage can, in addition to extra revenues that we're receiving. What are you recommending specific on? What are you and Ms. Leary are saying line by line? If you could go line by line.
Senior Center 5K, Library 2.5, Historic Society 10, and Goodwill 15. And I make a motion that we move on those numbers.
I want to challenge that motion. We didn't bring up the campus, municipal campus.
That's not a nonprofit, that's a separate issue.
That money's in that money is in that packet.
It's in the 45,000.
That money's in that 45,000. So I mean, we sat and we listened to our chief. This is the time for this project. This is going to be a 10-year project, most likely. He may not be sitting on the council when they finish that building, but it will take us into the next 100 years. This is the time to do it. There's funds available. If not, we should set that money aside. If we're not going to spend the money on the study, I'm good with that. I will agree with everyone there. But I recommend that at that point, we, as a city and a city council, retrofit the buildings to make it safe for people to work, safe for people to attend meetings, make it so that these Zoom meetings are going to be a thing of the future no matter what happens. This will happen for everywhere. This will probably start happening in the state Senate. This will start happening everywhere. Let's retrofit the building right now. Let's spend the money now to retrofit the building so that we can make it handicap accessible. We can make it safe. We can make the acoustics right. We can make the seating right. We can make it safe, and we can go from there.
What building are you talking about?
Our council chambers right now, and our business office.
But that building doesn't even belong to us.
Well, then we have to do something. We have to have a place to meet.
I agree, but the building doesn't belong to us. That belongs to the trustees.
Well, maybe they'll work on the study with us.
Right, but we also talked about moving our meetings to the senior center, and the chief had not yet had an opportunity to evaluate that for its security. It certainly has multiple exits and it's handicapped accessible. And I believe its acoustics are better. I don't know that it has the audiovisual equipment, but it might be amenable to that for our meeting. I think that's probably more feasible than, you can't get past the fact that that council chamber is on the second story. And I mean, to make a second exit we'd have to, do significant alterations to the exterior of the building, and it's in the historic area and it's not our building. I just don't see that as being feasible. I think we have to meet someplace else.
With all due respect, I brought that up. I brought the safety concern up probably 3 years ago. The chief, Mr. Barthel, Jeff, I think, was involved. We looked at multiple sites. None of them really worked. I thought it would be a great idea that we would move the meetings around a little bit, give people give them a chance to be more involved, get more neighborhoods involved. And after thinking about that, I thought to myself, wow, so here's the city of Newcastle, one of the oldest cities in the country, and we have our council meetings where? A senior center? We don't even have a permanent meeting place? Doesn't that sound like a little awkward to everyone?
I agree with that. And plus, it's not only is this our meetings, we're talking about multiple meetings, and it's been difficult for us to schedule in the past. Plus, you'd have to bring things in, you'd be disruptive, you'd have to do a safety check going in there because someone could hide something and it not be obvious to you. So, I mean, I agree with Ms. Platt. I think we should have a place to meet. I think we should spend the $15,000 to figure out what we could do in the property we already own. Even if we phased it, we could decide that the most important thing is the city office, or we could decide the most important thing is a multi-purpose council chamber room. But I think we ought to allocate the $15,000. So if you take all the recommended amounts, and you need to throw in beautification for $1,000.
Okay.
Because we're going to be very unhappy if there are no flowers. So that's 33.5. So if we add the 15,000, that's 48.5. And compared to what we have, which is 45.6, then we would have, and I guess we said there's maybe $2,000 on trash cans possibly.
Madam President, if I may, if you're at 48, we're at 48,000 if we take the savings on the trash can. So if you're at 48.5, it's a $500 differential, or take $500 off of whatever, the society or Goodwill. So it's $500.
Can't we find that $500 somewhere else in our budget rather than deep?
I'm just saying we can. I'm just saying that's where, if
I
you're
mean,
going
I don't
based
wanna
on, if you're going based on what you should be going
the
based on,
actual
which was
numbers
the,
are.
right.
Okay.
Well,
But I don't want to split hairs in a budget over $500 that we can
Sure.
probably find somewhere else.
It's your decision, and we
So-
probably can.
Right. So that, to me, I think it's better to stick with what we had as an allocation. So do we have a motion to?
Madam President,
Yeah.
can I just interrupt 1 second?
Sure.
Before we make a motion, I just want to make sure 100% that MSC is on board for their half of the study.
I can address that. Okay,
Thank you,
so
sir.
sure, they're waiting to see what you're gonna do. So I spoke to Pam yesterday. I think, it was yesterday, and I said, here's where we are. We have this discussion tonight. I will let her know whatever it is you guys decide tomorrow. I'll let her know tomorrow what you decide tonight. And I believe, though I can't speak definitively, I believe they're on board for going to the next step. Now, that could change, but I believe they're just waiting to hear from you guys.
Okay, I mean, that only makes sense to make sure that they are with us. I mean,
Right, and of course,
it's going to be a joint project all the way through.
Right, and the point is, I think your point, I mean, it's a good point, number one, but number two, also, obviously, we're splitting that. That's 15 each, so.
Correct.
Correct.
And this is President Redford. I talked to Pam this morning. I was talking about other issues, and I asked for the confirmation that Mr. Barthel mentioned. So they are they are very anxious to start this because they have a lot of concerns about their space too. So, so at this point, we would have 1,000 for beautification, 5,000 for the senior center, 2,500 for the library, 10,000 for the historical society, 15,000 for Goodwill Fire Company, and 15,000 for a municipal campus study, and that would bring a total of, I think, 48.5. Is that correct?
That's right.
Do I have a motion?
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, we passed. Thank you. That's a lot of hard work, and you know, we look forward to working with all our nonprofits and appreciate all the support that they give us and our city itself. At this point, we're going to move on to discussion of possible city flag designs. I'm going to let Mr. Russell Smith lead that.
Now for something completely different. Kim, could you bring up the picture?
Yes, hold on one second.
I'm going to have to learn how to do PowerPoint on these. As you'll remember, there wasn't much enthusiasm for the designs that that NAVA had come up with. That's the North American Vexillological Association, but there did seem to be some sentiment for the branding system. So I went back to the drawing board and took the shield from the branding system and laid it out in a few different ways. I put it against the dark blue background from the branding system, but that's not a given by any means. Other colors in the system are a light blue, a dark red, a light yellow, and then a tannish yellow, giving you more colors than even the trash cans. And so I'll explain these. First of all, I had to make the shield just as big as possible so that folks could see what it is. And I think folks are used to seeing the different flags flying along the streets of Newcastle and also on the courthouse. So they are useful symbols for Newcastle. The first one, number 1 there, I just did plain, centered, more or less as big as possible. And then that second one, of course, it includes the river on the end, since the Delaware River is key to our very existence. It was and is. And so it's very much part of our identity. One of the flag people had suggested that I shift the seal toward the flagpole, like you see it here, and it looked kind of lonely there, so I did add the river there. Then the next one, number 3, the river appears again, and this way, even when the flag was hanging down, you pretty much see the river as part of the flag. And then the 4th one, I did really shift the seal over, and that would assure that when there isn't much wind, most of the seal would be visible. Number 5 up at the top, I added the 1651. First I did it just in gold 1651 without the blue behind it, and was told, well, on the other side the numbers would be reversed on each other. And so I tried to put what I thought would be sort of a ribbon in back of the shield, but my skills in the design program are limited, so it just looks like 2 blocks. But that was the idea. It would be kind of a ribbon behind the shield. And so that's what I've come up with. I sent you a link to all of the flags in Delaware of towns that have flags. For one that was probably the most interesting was Lewis. It had a shield from the town of Lewis in England, and then it had the ocean behind that, wavy lines all the way down. So that was kind of interesting. So that's where we are, folks. And if I'm ready for your comments, concerns, whatever you think. Please, your comments, please.
I actually like the one, now that you explained that would be a ribbon. And I can envision a little bit more waviness from wherever the final design would come from. That I do like the 1651 being in there with the.
Yeah, I do too.
Any other comments?
I thought the problem with having the date in there was that when you look at the flag from the reverse side, it's like looking at it in a mirror. I mean, you're not seeing, you can't read the numbers. Because
well, I think you'd have the numbers on the back too, but they would maybe conflict with each other. You'd see when you're looking at the 51 on this side, you would be seeing the back of the 16 on the other if you did it that way. I don't know if this is the answer, but it seemed to me to be an answer.
I like number 3.
Number 3, okay.
It gets the river in there and the shield.
Okay.
I'm in flat here. Hey, Russ, you did a nice job on this, actually. It's you're a lot better than last presentation, I will say that. I did some research today. I'm quarantined just because I've been exposed, so I've got a lot of time on my hand right now. Like I said last meeting, most city and state flags have the name. I just pulled up the city of Lewis flag on my phone.
Yeah.
And it says, 1631 Lewis, Delaware.
Right. And that
why don't we just go with what we have? I mean, is there anything wrong with that?
With what we had?
No, with what we have. I mean, like on every vehicle, it says the city of Newcastle. And I mean, it's pretty much the exact same thing, except it says the city of.
Well, the
only, not to cut you off, but the research I did on flag today, I give you credit because it's tedious and I'd say boring on my part, but most countries don't have their names. Mexico did. I did take notice of that. But most, like Dover, Wilmington, City of Chester, City of Philadelphia, Westchester, Pennsylvania, Lewis, they all have their name on their flag. And
well, the flag experts, Mike, and I'll take you back there again. They recommend against that, and they would recommend against that 1651. It's just because it's not a clean design, and you can't read it. Nothing really stands out. With Lewis, I like Lewis's flag as a design, but they put the name, I think, underneath and the date over top. Well, yeah, but then you can't see what that thing is in the middle. And that's the idea, is to make a statement with what that thing is you're putting forward. And if you look at the good flag, bad flag booklet, or you look at the NAVA if you look at the NAVA website, you'll see a lot of examples of flags where, they've got writing all over them and nobody can read it, and it doesn't make a strong statement. And that's what they're trying to tell us to do, that you want to have that instantly recognizable, and you don't want to have to read what it says. And when you start, it's like with having the city seal, nobody knows what that says or what it is.
Right. They don't know what the ship is, but it does say Newcastle, Delaware on it.
Well, yeah, but you're not looking at it right close up. When you guys are holding it up on the dock, yeah, but when it's out on the ship and it's waving, who knows what that is? And
Well, I
that's,
mean, you could say the same thing about the shield at that point. I'm
No,
just saying, I
the
think.
field is a lot more colorful. That flag is
No.
blue and
Right.
white.
Well, that's
I'm not saying, I'm okay. I'm not even sure how we got to get a new flag, and I'm okay with it. That's all I'm saying, is I think if we're gonna do it, maybe we should keep it all together, just like all our vehicles. It looks good.
well, well, it's not a flag design. It looks good when you're close up to it on a vehicle, but you spread it all over a flag, it's going to be all over the place.
Yeah, a flag.
How hard is it to work one up, Ross? I don't know if I can do it. I'll try tomorrow.
Okay,
I'll
I'll work one up for you if that's
Okay.
what you want to see. Okay.
I mean, I'm not trying to be difficult. I just think.
I'll use my poor skills and work one up for.
Right, and I mean, this is something. Put it up for a referendum. We got an election coming up in April. Put it on the
A
ballot.
referendum?
Why not? I mean, you're changing the entire image of the town. We met for 6 months on branding. I'm just throwing it out there, but
there were other options to attack this. One was to say, okay, anybody in the town, you want to design a flag, go ahead and send it to us, and then we'll find a way. And then, okay, so that would, there might be some problems with that. And the other was, okay, we'll pick some out of this group and we'll put them out and have people vote on them. We could do that, but the folks who were voting on it, they're just looking at their favorite design, rather than something that is a flag and has certain guidelines. You have, did you look at the good flag, bad flag booklet?
I did.
And then, and watch the video?
I did not watch the video.
Watch the video, please.
Okay.
Okay, if you'll watch the video, I'll go ahead and work up another flag.
And I got time. I've got plenty of time on my hands. So that's all I have to say
Okay,
about
there
that.
you go. All right, all problems are now resolved. Okay.
Mr. Smith, is it okay if I guess if I tend to like number 2, but that's me. So we have one vote for number 2, one for number 5, and one for number 3. So maybe take those 3 and what Mr. Platt suggested and come back and have another discussion or put it out there. What would you recommend?
Let's do that. Okay.
Okay.
That would be.
Thank you,
But
Mr. Smith.
I do think we have to evaluate them, try to envision them on a flagpole, 20 feet over your head, or going by on the Kalmar Nickel, or being carried in a parade where they're hanging without moving in the wind.
Right.
You're not going to see a lot of, we have to evaluate them that way, not just looking at spread out on a piece of paper, because the only way you ever see them that way in real life is when it's very windy.
That's another problem with the city seal flags, that rarely are they, flying out flat in the wind. So, okay.
Madam President.
Yes.
Thanks for indulging me. So, Russ, knowing full well the dangers of what I'm about to say.
Oh Lord.
This is like jumping into a discussion of what's your favorite art, and for every person there will be a different answer, and the truth is they're all about right. So anyway, so thank you for doing this. So let me ask you this, and I did read the pamphlet, Good Flag, Bad Flag. I did watch the video, and it was very, very well done. You in particular have, and I'm with you, and I like to follow the recommendations of the association, because they've studied the heck out of this stuff for decades and decades, and so they've got a reasonable set of points of view. So the 1% of me, though, wants to raise this question. We've made an issue out of differentiating ourselves from surrounding areas that are unincorporated. Mm-hmm. Would this be maybe an example of a way in which to further drive, and recognizing the shield on its own, maybe the shield with the waves, shield with the numbers, some version of this would work maybe just as well, but would it be a way to something caught in my throat. Would it be a way to differentiate ourselves successfully to further the city of Newcastle by actually putting the words on, if we didn't have that hanging over us, and we do for crime statistics, other reasons that we've talked about, would it be reasonable to make an exception in this case? And or what would the association say if we kind of, or maybe, and maybe you did, maybe you already walked them through the confusion that we suffer through all the time, which has a negative impact, a drag on housing prices and other kinds of things. Any thoughts about any of that? Of actually putting the words on, because in the move to try to differentiate ourselves, maybe that would be a helpful piece. I don't know.
You know, I've talked to them about words on flags, and they're dead set against it. They just don't, you know, even putting the dates, the date on here, I stepped over the line. So
okay,
as far as they're concerned, it's a non-starter.
Okay, so they're absolutely steadfast in their view that adding verbiage or anything like that is not wise. Okay,
and they like our branding system, and they like the shield, but felt that it needed to be spread all over the flag, like the Maryland flag. If we could do it, I couldn't figure a way to do that.
Right, take all four of those elements and just kind of stretch it.
Take all four of those elements and make that the flag.
Right, that would be cool actually, but okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right then.
Okay, this is an important topic, but it's the kind of thing you have to contemplate for. Let's go to the next one topic. Thank you, Mr. Smith. This is about discussion regarding, and I don't expect us to make any decision, but I just want to make sure we introduce it and make sure we have a path forward. This is a discussion regarding city clerk and treasurer appointments. And Mr. Laska, would you basically give us an overview on how we need to consider this? This is because we changed our charter to make these appointed positions like they are in, for instance, the clerk is appointed or an employee, and all the rest of the cities in Delaware. And I think the treasurer is in a similar situation. They're appointed, other than there's a very few example of people running for office for the treasurer. So if you could just give us an overview of what we need to do and what's the timing.
Thank you, Madam President. First, I should point out that the current treasurer and current clerk were elected, and under the old charter, they hold their offices until their successors are, in this case, appointed. The appointments are for indefinite terms, sort of like the city solicitor or the city engineer, subject to removal at council's pleasure. The only distinction is that it takes 4 votes of council to remove a clerk or a treasurer. And if you recall from the discussions and debate about the charter change, that was to avoid purely political removals. There had to be a real consensus amongst council that there was a need for change. That's really all there is to it. It's just a matter of appointing someone. We had, I think in discussions, we had talked about the clerk's position is largely ministerial. Attesting to resolutions or ordinances and some other similar duties. Historically, the clerk has handled minutes, but that's not assigned to the clerk via the charter. So we had talked, I think, about using a clerical staff person as the appointed clerk. I don't know if that's still council's thinking. The treasurer, I think you really want to look for somebody there who has the same type of skills as Ms. Carlin has had, somebody with some experience with the numbers and the budgeting. So that requires, I think, a little more experience and skill.
So Mr. Laska, what's our timing? When is, as elected officers, when are their terms over?
The terms don't end until you appoint successors. These are just like under the old charter. Any member of council remains in office until their successor is appointed, or in that case, elected. But in this case, you have to do the appointment, and it's a mandatory appointment. The charter says that council shall appoint a city clerk and a city treasurer. So it's not something that should be postponed indefinitely.
So they theoretically, they could be assigned to be treasurer and city clerk, assuming they're willing to continue to some indefinite time, or till June, until the new new council is in office, or we could appoint in advance of that time, so that when the new council came into office, then there would be someone in place, and it would not be something they would have to deal with day one.
Could be either way.
Okay.
If this current council makes the appointment, just remember that the new council, if they wanted to change that appointment, it would require 4 votes.
So any questions or comments at this point? Like I said, we're not going to make a decision this evening. We've, got a lot of information and some things to consider.
Mr. Laska, I just want to make it clear, just to appoint, we need 4 votes, correct?
Not to appoint, to remove.
To remove, okay, that's I was just clarifying that. That's what I thought. I was just making sure. Okay. Madam President, my thought on this is, I think we should act as this should probably all happen as a new council, new president comes into play in April.
Huh?
I mean, I think we should make that decision. I think this council should make that decision for the next one. There could be technically 3 brand new people on there. I know it took me a good year to get my feet wet and figure out what was going on. It's not an easy job to take, and I think we should have maybe a public meeting on it, take some public input, and make a decision from there.
Why public input?
I'll think about point. You got a point. You're right. Probably not.
Well, normally we have public input on everything we do.
Right.
Yeah, but you're saying we should do something before the change in offices, just to make it smooth, because it's a lot to put someone's plate day one. And
Right.
if Mr. Laska, if we made let's say theoretically, if we made an appointment in February, does that take effect immediately, or does it take effect after the election?
It would be after the election.
Okay, but we could make the appointment in February, but as soon as the votes are canvassed, which is the Monday after the Saturday of the election, that person would be in place, those persons would be in place to be treasurer and clerk. Okay, that seems like a logical thing to do, is to make that decision.
I guess my next question would be is, how do we pick one? I mean, do we put out resumes? Do we take council appointments? That's what I guess that's where I was saying public input, Valerie, just have the discussion in an open forum to see, especially a treasurer. Carlin's irreplaceable. I don't understand that, but we're going to have to come up with something to start the process. Mr. Laska, any ideas on that?
Well, I would say again, not only what I said before, when it comes to the clerical position, the clerk position, I think you're looking for somebody with administrative skills. So I would look to your staff initially as people who would be readily available, who could fill the role. And you can consult with the city administrator as to who he feels is best suited for that role and has the ability to do it and the interest to do it. As to the treasurer's position, I think the first question I would have logically is whether or not Ms. Carlin's interested in continuing to serve, because she's done it for a long time. She knows well, there's the answer to that question. There's the answer to that question. To me, that's an easy appointment. You've got somebody who knows the city, knows the systems, and has the experience, and is willing and able to do it. But again, this is all up to council's purview.
It's Council President Ratchford. In other cities, they don't have a council secretary and a city clerk, because it's a lot of the function is a notary function. And currently the council secretary is the one getting the signatures on all the documents and basically making sure that when you sign, it's you and not some random person off the street. But so I think that that may make something, to consider would be the continuation of the existing treasurer and then have the council secretary, if that's suitable to Mr. Barthel to, continue in that function. Then whoever's in office a year or 2 or 5 years from now could certainly make a change at any point that they wish to change.
I agree with that.
I agree also.
Madam President, I also agree, but I just want to amend that slightly. I don't think it should be Mr. Barthel, and I've said this multiple times when I said the mayor, the administrator, the solicitor. I don't think we should attach names because we don't know who's going to be there in 2 years or 5 years. And we don't know who's going to be on council in 2 or 5 years, but their elected position versus, paid administrative positions. So I just think that it should be a council decision. I'm not saying ask for references, but I guess what I worry is if a city clerk gets fired for lack of duties, they would still be the clerk until council replaces them with a majority vote. So they would still have to work with that administrator.
Mr. Barthel, how many of people in your office have a notary?
2, one in 220 and one at the police station.
So,
Who are one is finance and the other is a secretary at the police station.
right, so I think by what the council president meant by asking Mr. Barthel was if he's okay with one of the staff members doing this, which I think, I'm not going to put words in his mouth.
And I agree with that. My thing is down the road, if there's an argument between Mr. Smith and Mrs. Jones, Mr. Smith and Mrs. Jones still have to work together because one's appointed by council, one's hired by the city. We talked about this when we made the charter change. And I don't have a problem with that. I think, notary.
Why are we talking about it?
I just think it's an interesting, it could be an interesting situation.
It happens everywhere in every job. Somebody's hired, somebody's elected, and you still got to work together.
And this is Suzanne Souter. I'm confused by the question about being a notary. Does the clerk have to be a notary? No?
No? Oh, okay. I thought they notarized our signatures. No, it's the stamp for the city. Is that it?
Yes,
Nothing.
They just go
Or just the
they're
signature.
attesting documents. That's the attesting is effectively witnessing signatures.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so then anyone we ask to take that position could do that.
Correct.
Okay, my bad. Sorry. I thought they had to notarize.
Okay. Like I said, I think that it was good to introduce this topic. Any other comments? I think, we'll bring it back up again. And I think we have a good path forward.
Madam President,
Yes.
if I could, I think the idea of thinking hard and getting this lined up, in the event, and it's, I'll add my 2 cents. Heartwarming to hear the treasurer announce her willingness to continue to serve. But I think in future years where perhaps that might not be an option, having people and making this decision soon would then allow people to kind of get acclimated with the incumbent for a few months, kind of understand what it is they have to do, sit through a meeting or 2, watch the pace of things, understand the reporting. I think all makes sense. It'd probably be a good practice. So I commend everybody for starting to think about it now and making a decision sooner as opposed to later so that the transition is smoother. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, this has been a good discussion. We're going to bring it back up and be thinking about it and then, make sure that we've answered all the questions. At this point, we'll move to the last agenda item and ask the mayor to talk about the signage and give some history on this. It's the last part of your packet. And I want to make sure it's real clear is that these are pavement markings, not signs. So.
Thank you very much. All right, so back to art class we go. So the history of this is the following. Some time ago, it might have been about 2 years ago, we had a utility contractor, in this case it was Delmarva, approach us and said, hey, we want to run new gas line service or updated gas line service to residents. And that means that on the bicycle path, in certain locations, we're going to have to tear it up, but, and we're going to have to shut it down for a while. And when we're done, we'll come back and we'll repave the entire length of it, even though we're going to just be ruining sections. We'll go do the whole thing. And so I took the opportunity to ask them if they would help us with some of the signs that along the bike path that have been damaged and vandalized with spray paint and other kinds of things, and or would they help us with some of our, we had completed some branding in helping bicyclists find their way to the bike rack that we have over by the Terry House, and in proximity to downtown and the bathrooms and and now the really great repair station that's there too, with air and tools and things of that nature. And so they said yes, they would give us a small amount of money. It was I think just under $1,000, if I recall, might have been $800 or $900 for the purposes of doing that. And I had recently been at a chamber event that was hosted at Sinorama in Newark, where the manager there had instead of a doormat on the outside of the building on the asphalt, had screened his logo onto the actual asphalt, and it looked really brilliant. It was bright, it was colorful, and I asked him about it and what the cost was, and that kind of was the basis for the idea. Others, there are other communities, of course, that have road placed markers that help bicyclists as well. And so I thought, okay, well, if we can use a generous contribution from somebody else, why not give this a shot? So at that point, I wanted to step out of it because I'm a recreational biker. I'm not an avid biker. And I wanted to ask somebody. And so I approached James Wilson with Bike Delaware, who happens to live in town on 4th Street. His opinion on this, and asked him if he would work with the sign folks in Newark who are going to do the artwork, the screening, etc. And this is what he came up with. And then I similarly asked James if he would recommend where to place these. And these designs are things that he came up with, and these are color schemes and locations that, again, he who is in the bike business and has been for the better part of his career, these were his recommendations. And so I'd like your input. I can give this back to James, but as you see from what's in your packet, thank you, Kim. There are different, and this was an experiment because truthfully, we don't know how long these will last, whether they will last a season or two, or maybe not even make it through a summer season, hard to say. But bikers do report finding things like this helpful because when you're moving quickly, seeing smaller signs that are posted with any kind of information, it can be a little bit challenging, and I've reported that back. I think appreciate the signs that we have along the bike path, the little small brown signs, but if you're moving at any kind of speed, and my vision's not the best anyway, but I'm past it before I even kind of acknowledge what it even said. So I find things like this much more helpful. And the goal again was to direct people to the bicycle parking downtown. So let me pause there. I think the rest of it is rather intuitive. You can see the locations that James has suggested, the arrows, the design, and what he's recommended and where to place them. And that all fits within our budget, so it won't cost the city anything. I think Mr. Barthel. I think I have that right. I think that the entirety of this is covered with the grant that we got from Delmarva.
Excuse me, as far as I understand, that is correct.
And it would, and this is Councilman Director, you wouldn't have to do all of them at once. I mean, obviously you wouldn't want to put anything on Delaware Street because you'd be gone in, 2 or 3 months. But you may also want to see, how it works. So that's something also to consider. And I know Mr. Smith has been working on some additional wayfinding signs, for the city too. So comments?
I'll
yeah,
just make the comment, I was looking at the samples. I prefer the 2D cyclist to the 3D because it's more typical of the sort of standard icon that's used to mark a bike path. And therefore, I think it would be more instantaneously recognizable to cyclists as they ride past, some of them at a faster clip and others like me at a slower pace. So that's my 2 cents worth on that. The rest of it, I think, looks great with the city and then, directing them to the downtown and so forth.
I concur.
I do too. I think they look great.
They really do look good. We're gonna put something up Delaware Street after we said we're not gonna paint the granite curves and.
Ouch, ouch.
No, I think they look good. And I think, the funny thing is people are getting used to looking down, unfortunately, because, 6 feet apart thing. I won't be, I'll change the subject slightly. I was at 7th and South today, and then bicyclists do not stop at that stop sign coming out of Shawtown. I know it was discussed before, but I sat there today and I was really surprised at how many people just blow that stop sign on bicycle.
Oh, I know.
I
And
think they feel they have to stop.
It is.
In cars too.
It's a
Yeah,
disaster.
cars too, but bikes.
Yeah, that counts for it. All needs to be looked at as part of our transportation design process. But I do think it was always envisioned that the signs would need help on the pavement because, as you said, people look down, and I think it's a nice introduction to the city. I wouldn't put them on Delaware Street because it hasn't been paved yet. I don't know, or you have to do it in the summer. I'm not sure if you have to do it in the summer versus winter.
So thank you for the question, Madam President. So a couple reactions. Number one, I think the thought is if everybody is in agreement with the design, and I would associate myself with Ms. Souter's comments. I too like the 2-dimensional, not the 3-dimensional look. And then and the location and et cetera. I think that we'll get them prepared, and then we'll wait for better weather. And I think, of course, it makes sense to wait until Delaware Street is completed before doing the Delaware Street piece. I might ask them if they can squeeze in. Now, I'm going to say this, and I'm not a traffic engineer, and I don't know whether I'm violating any state or local law, but it might make some sense at 7th Street to see if they just could put a stop sign on the ground right where you're supposed to stop, because that is just a disastrous place for bikers. And I don't, if they would, and if that's, if that's something, I don't know, Mr. Barthel, if that's something that we could inquire about, but boy, anything we can do to get people to stop. I just don't know if anyone's going to read oncoming traffic does not stop. They're going to be halfway in the intersection before they get past the first phrase. And so, or the first word or two. And so maybe a visual stop sign on the ground would alert them that, they have to stop. I don't know.
I agree with that. They did that on Moore's Lane. They did that on Moore's Lane and Boulevard.
Why not a stop sign there?
There is one, but no, Valerie, nobody stops at it, especially on bikes.
Yeah, the bikers just ride right through it, because I don't know if they're just not paying attention, or I think, Val, that they're coming from Shawtown and they're coming towards, right by the sailing club. And I think they don't understand that the oncoming traffic that's past the SPCA, et cetera, that's turning onto 7th Street towards Buy Right Liquors and all that, that it's actually, that they don't have to stop.
That's
And
what
it-
I'm talking about, a stop
That's
sign.
what, that's what the sign is there for. That says
That's
I
what
see.
I'm talking about, a stop
but-
sign.
there.
I see what you're saying.
Bill put that sign there to tell people that oncoming traffic has the right of way. Right,
I
Bill?
like the one on the ground. That's not a bad idea and that's cheap.
Actually, but I see what Valerie's saying too. So
Right.
Val, you're saying on South at 7th, perhaps rather than have people run, just drive, not, rather than continuing on, but make them stop.
Right.
And then you have kind of a 4-way intersection. It's kind
But
of an awkward
you
intersection.
don't have to have a stop sign on a corner. I mean, obviously, if you know how, it's gonna be back, I don't know how many feet, I'm gonna guess 30. I don't know, it's gonna be back 30 feet. Maybe you draw a white stop line in there. I don't know
Right,
what
but
the other,
that part is a state highway. On the other side where Mike said put it on the ground is city's highway. We could do that.
so right
without
there,
state
it's
permission.
south and
South is a city, state highway.
south is not a state highway.
I thought that was part of Route 9.
No, South Street is not part of Route 9.
So Bill, maybe.
Oh, it's
Bill,
not?
Well, there's clearly an answer here. So as you come, 6th is, when you get down at the end of 6th,
Right.
if you turn right onto South and then continue on 7th, is that all considered state road?
No, that from 6th to 7th on South Street and beyond that is city. Coming down Route 9, that's state. Coming down, you make a right on the south, that's city. And then
35 years, I finally learned something.
then you make a left onto 6th and it's city until you hit Delaware Street, right before Delaware Street, and then it becomes state.
Okay. Learn something new every day. Thank you.
Clear as mud.
Sounds like we need to study this one a little more, and especially if we are going to redo it,
Stan Souter, I have a question about the stop sign for the bikes on the street. Delaware passed a law last year that bikes don't have to stop at the stop sign if they can, if my understanding is correct. They have to slow down so they could stop if cars were coming, but they're not required to stop if they see that the way is clear. And I'm sure James knows all about this, Mike Caranta, but I think we need to clarify that. And maybe if we put the stop sign on the ground there, something needs to say bikes must stop or bikes stop or something, because I think that's part of the confusion. And they don't realize that all the cars coming the other direction, other ways on those streets where those streets come together, they don't realize that some of those cars do not have a stop sign. And I think that's one of the reasons they blow through the stop sign, is they think the cars have to stop. So clarify that with James, and I'm sure he's familiar with that all about the stopping for bicycles at a stop sign.
I will do that. Thank you for that. Chief, I know I saw your camera come back on. Do you have something you want to say about all this?
I just want to say that a stop sign, a four-way stop sign there would be a disaster. Traffic would back up to Wilmington. So.
That's not good. Okay. Yeah.
Motion to adjourn?
Mr. Smith has a comment.
I'm going to hold you up. I just want to hold you up.
All right. I just want to go get a pizza.
We do have a branding system and a wayfinding system.
So Russ, is this not consistent?
It is not. And did you if the small bike signs don't work, do we maybe just need bigger bike signs, or should we coordinate these two things in some way? There already are 2 signs have been produced and sitting in Bill's office for the bike rack and the restrooms. They're for either way. They're just not going up until Delaware Street is finished. And the terminology probably ought to be coordinated. On the wayfinding systems, we use historic center rather than downtown. So there needs to be a bit of coordination at the least.
Okay, excellent point. Okay, so if you, Russ, James, correct?
I do not.
Okay,
if I met him.
Okay, well, how about this? I appreciate that. That's solid point. So why don't we do this? I'll do an email introduction, and if you could share some of that. I like the idea of having some symmetry. Why have 5 different versions of the same thing? And frankly, I was unaware of that. So thank you for that.
It becomes visual clutter.
Yeah, no, agreed. And I was unaware of that. So thanks for that. So why don't we, all right, we'll go back and if there's some design time that Mark at Sinorama has spent on this, I will, I'll cover some of that to get it right. But if you'll be in touch with him and share some of that, and I'll eat crow for sending him off on this journey without knowing what you just showed. So, but thank you for that. That's good.
Okay.
Okay, well, we're going to leave it in your hands at this point, and I think there is going to be a motion to adjourn.
So, second.
Who made the first motion, Mr. Platt?
Absolutely.
Okay, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thanks for your patience. Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.
Be
Good
safe.
night.
Good
Night
night.
all.
Thanks, everybody.